Hi everyone, it's Vanessa. So if you are familiar with my content, I have been doing videos to help long distance couples with their long distance relationship using communication theories. As a communication scholar, I think it is important that I have some transparency about my relationship as well. And as I recorded some of these videos these past couple weeks, I realized something that it is a bit hard, and I'm sure some of you can relate, to find the perfect balance of what you can and can't share on social media. And sometimes this can be an issue in long distance relationships too, especially because you are using computer mediated communication. So for this next segment, I want to talk about privacy management and how this looks like, especially for a long distance couple. Because sometimes if they're not there, it can be a little harder to set these boundaries. So I would like to introduce a new theory called communication privacy management theory. It was first conceptualized in 1991. Its original name was communication boundary management theory. However, a scholar by the name of Sandra Petronio renamed it to communication privacy management theory. So this theory really helps us understand how people manage private information by either creating or controlling any kind of private boundary per se. However, I don't just want to be focusing on anything negative for this next few videos, as I do want to end it on a positive note. That being said, let's dive into this week's Distance Diaries. I'll see you guys at the next pit stop. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Distance Diaries. So as I mentioned in my introduction video, this week we're going to be focusing on any conflict that might arise in long distance relationship that has anything to do with privacy. And I am not doing any skits because I feel like in order to really speak on privacy, I have to feel more vulnerable. Therefore, I will be speaking on my behalf. And I will not lie, it's taking a lot of courage to speak about any issues because no one wants to lose space about their own personality or their relationships on the internet. However, I do think it is a great example for this segment and talking about privacy management as a whole. So let's dive into it. We are now back to the segment 404, Love Not Found. Aww. So going back to privacy management theory, this theory really focuses on who you decide to share private information with, like specifically with whom and under what circumstance, because sometimes you might have a boundary that can or can't be crossed depending on the context. Therefore, when it comes to a long distance relationship, this can be a lot more difficult considering that you have this little barrier of lack of physical contact to really set those boundaries. So let's discuss an issue that I have actually personally experienced before. Let's talk about social media boundaries. So if you have Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, anything that has to do with sharing photos, videos, or anything about your life to the world, this is where this might apply. An issue that can arise from this is perhaps that one of the partners wants to share some photos or videos from something that both of them did, but the other partner prefers to keep certain things off of the internet for whatever reason. Here we might see some miscommunication. Perhaps partner number one that did want to share the pictures or videos feels that partner number two is trying to hide their relationship, when really partner number two might just value more privacy than partner number one, which is okay. So this is when communication privacy management theory comes in. If both partners feel that they want different things when it comes to sharing things on social media, they might want to decide to start negotiating these privacy boundaries online. I will give you an example. So sometimes my boyfriend takes unflattering pictures of me. And by unflattering, I mean perhaps it's at an angle I don't like, I have food in my mouth, I'm making an ugly face, things that I don't want that kind of make me seem a little unappealing. And so one day he did post this photo of me that I didn't really like. And of course, I was a little annoyed. I thought, oh my God, what are your friends, family gonna think of me? I look disgusting. So he was very accommodating and he did take it down out of respect for me and my boundaries. But after that, we did come to a negotiation. And that was that if he did decide to post any photos of just me, that I would prefer to see the photo first in order to feel that it is decent enough to post. We both saw this as a win-win. You know, he still gets to post a photo of me while I feel confident that the photo is something I approve of and doesn't really make me lose face, essentially. So that's just one example. But if you're thinking in terms of perhaps if you go out on a trip or if you're going out to a party, then you might want to discuss what is the limitations that you want to show on your social media. You could do what I did and perhaps ask your partner to show you the photos or videos that they want to post for pre-approval per se. However, it doesn't need to be taken that far. You could even just request, like, make sure I don't have anything in my teeth, or that my eyes aren't closed, or that we are all smiling, small things. So another thing you might want to consider is any information that your partner shares online. So I personally do not have anything about where I work or where I go to school on my Instagram or TikTok. So when it comes to this information, I do ask that he keeps certain aspects of my life to himself. This is what we consider them to co-own private information. So an example of this could be perhaps you are celebrating your anniversary or your dog's birthday or your birthday. And one of you decides to keep it private because you value the privacy of your own personal information. And because you are now the co-owner of that private information, you both technically have a say in what you want in terms of privacy for this information. I would like to emphasize that this requires a lot of trust between you and your partner. So whatever decision is made, make sure it is respectful for the both of you and it is something that doesn't put one of you at a higher place and makes the other feel, less in the relationship. It's a little embarrassing, but we were at the zoo. And we went inside the butterfly exhibit. And up until that point, I thought I loved butterflies, but I quickly realized that I am actually terrified of them. And I spent 90% of the time in there terrified. So now my boyfriend and I were both aware of this information about me that neither of us knew about. However, at the time, I said perhaps we should just not say anything about it because it's a little embarrassing on my end. As you can see, I have since gotten over that embarrassment of being afraid of butterflies, but I have not exactly gotten over the fear of being afraid of butterflies. Anyway, that's enough of the social media. Let's talk about your interpersonal relationship with your partner. So if you and your partner are doing your own thing on different sides of the world, perhaps there are some stressors or worries in life that are consuming your mind. And in order to keep things more calm in your relationship, you decide to be selective with the things you want to disclose to your partner. The issue here is it brings up concern and worry for your partner if you start acting in a way that doesn't align with how you usually do. Now, this is detrimental because you are now risking the trust and honesty that you once held so dearly with your partner. And the last thing you want is to have conflict about not communicating what you are feeling because you think it's best to just have privacy about your own life too. Which is nothing wrong. However, it is good to communicate what you do and don't want to share with your partner early on. Not to make it about me, but going back to me. I often have this issue where if I am overwhelmed with school and work, I don't exactly like to let my boyfriend know because I know he also has a stressful time at school and I don't want that to also be another thing on top of his list to worry about. However, the issue with this is because I don't exactly have the outlet to talk with him about it, it can tend to dogpile on top of each other to the point where it just starts to overflow and it might lead to a bigger issue. So when this happens between me and my partner, I feel awful that I didn't open up to him sooner because he always ends up being understanding and he makes me feel like I am being heard. That being said, if you are on the receiving end of this sort of situation, it is best to have that open-mindedness and understanding that your partner just wanted to keep things private because they don't want to make your life difficult, essentially. Being said, on my end, it made me realize that being vulnerable actually helped strengthen our communication and relationship because it showed my partner that no matter how far we are from each other, we still want to share that open communication and everyday stresses with each other. In a way, it brought a sense of normalcy that you would see from a relationship that was in person. So to wrap up that small area of conflict between self-disclosure, if you are on the delivering end, do your best to be open, vulnerable about what it is you want to disclose to your partner. And if you are on the receiving end, do your best to be respectful, open-minded, and try to sympathize with what they have to say. And once everything is out in the open, perhaps you can make a plan to find time throughout the day or the week to have moments where you can be vulnerable and really express these concerns that you're having personally in your individual lives. So that is all that I have for privacy management. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you will join me at the next pit stop. Bye everyone. everyone, it's Vanessa back again with the Distance Diaries. This video we're going back to our segment Hotspots. Considering that the last video involved some issues you might have with privacy management, I wanted the next video to be more lighthearted and think of ways to be more romantic with your partner. So for that, we're going to be revisiting uncertainty reduction theory. So uncertainty reduction theory is the theory where we tend to want to reduce uncertainty to the best of our ability using our communication skills. Now this is very crucial, especially in the early stages of a relationship. This theory was first conceptualized by Charles Berger and Richard Calabrese in 1975. I happen to think that uncertainty reduction theory is the perfect theory to talk about for long-distance relationships because there are a lot of things that you can worry or stress about that just naturally come from not being with your partner for a long period of time. And formally introduce a new theory called expectancy violation theory. So this theory was first established by Judy Burgoon in 1978. And this theory really talks about how we tend to explain how people react when another person behaves in a way that violates their expectations. Now, this might sound bad at first, I get it. However, if we really think about it, violating your expectations can sometimes be a good thing. Let's assume for the sake of argument that you and your partner text all day, every day. Because you and your partner already established this set of like a ritual, routine, things that you can expect to happen. If your partner was to not text back for a few hours, this is an example of having your expectations violated. And that is because you already set this expectation that you text and call every day, all day. But because we already talked about that in some previous videos, we're going to talk about why EVT is actually really good for this too. So since we want to leave a positive impact on violating their expectations, let's look at different ways to do so. As you can see, I introduced my cute friend Smisky, who is shouting through a megaphone. I would hope that you found this amusable, but if you didn't, well, this defeats my point. But assuming you didn't expect for me to pull out the Smisky, you probably thought, oh, that's cute, cool, I didn't think she would do that. That is a very, very small example of how your expectation of what I would say was a little violated, but it wasn't exactly a bad thing. So going back to you guys constantly texting and on the phone, calling, whatever. So a way that you could have this positive violation that I think is probably the most resourceful is sending love letters. Now the reason that this can be a positive violation is because it increases any excitement that you have about each other. It is something more personal, something they had to put their time and effort to do, and you can see their actual handwriting, so it makes it more fun and personal. For me, I like to look at old letters from my boyfriend because it makes me feel closer to him knowing that this came from his brain to his hand to the paper. Another way you can positively violate their expectation is actually a lot less resourceful, but is equally as impactful, if not a lot more, is planning a surprise visit. Now I understand this is definitely not something every long distance couple can do consistently. But if it is something you want to do, and if it is within your time and you have the resources to do so, then this is a good opportunity. I'm fortunate enough that my boyfriend and I are not too far apart where we are in totally different time zones. So he actually did surprise me with a visit one time. What happened was my friend planned it. She said she wanted to meet up the next day because something crazy happened. Meanwhile, it was just a coy to get me to go out and see him outside of my house. And I was thrilled, excited, because I didn't even expect him to come visit me. But again, this is for those that are capable of doing this. If this is not possible for you at this time, then don't worry, we will look at other ways to positively affirm your partner. So we're gonna go back to computer-mediated communication again, away from anything physical, but that was just something I thought I'd include. Something that my boyfriend and I do, we have a shared music playlist. And because most music applications are pretty affordable or free in that case, it is a good way to do something that is a little customizable to your partner and what they like. Especially if you do certain artists or songs that remind you of them or that they like or that takes you back to a time in your relationship. And so the way this leads to positively violating their expectations is you just make it and randomly send it. Don't tell them, just do it. Your partner will think you were thinking of them, they will feel so honored, and because you took the time out of your day to make it, it will build that connection between the two of you. My boyfriend and I are really big on music. We like all different kinds of artists. That's the fun of creating playlists exclusively to your partner, is that you can make it whatever you want, and as long as you put in time and energy, your partner will love it. Another very resourceful thing you could do is send a random voicemail or video to your partner. Now, I did mention in previous videos that you can send random photos of each other throughout the day. However, I would like you to consider sending a video message to them, because you are actually sitting down and talking with them and sending them a romantic message. Maybe I'm speaking from personal experience, but nothing makes me happier than just being in class or walking to my car or sitting in my room and seeing a random voice memo pop up of my boyfriend saying, "I miss you so much, I can't wait to see you, I love you, bye." And it just completely changed the way I felt, because it's one thing to text it and to expect a text, but it's another thing to get a voice memo that you don't see very often. Yes, you might call later on that day, but if you get something really affirming to you out of the blue, it makes you feel more loved and more connected to the person, because once again, it feels like they're thinking about you, which they were. Something that my boyfriend and I sometimes like to do out of the blue is I will record myself doing a shopping haul and I'll send it to him. Or sometimes he will go to eat at a restaurant and he will record himself reviewing the drink or the new food place and send it to me. And though this isn't necessarily romantic, it is still very nice and kind of humorous to know that he thought of me while doing something so, I guess, normal in his life. Which goes to what I said in the previous video of having that sense of normalcy that physical in-person relationships have. I also just thought of another example when I was saying this, but everyone in my circle knows that I love Wicked. He surprised me with the Glinda Owala water bottle over FaceTime, of course. Though it wasn't physically in my hands, I was still very thrilled that he took time out of his day to go ahead and purchase it, and he just randomly decided to blurt it out that he got it for me. Now, the reason this made me feel connected to him was the fact that it showed that he listened to me and my interest. He knows I love Wicked, and he took the time to go out of his way to go on launch day to get that Owala. This is said Owala now. And I am much more happy about the fact that he did it rather than actually have it physically with me, although it is very cute. So to reinstate what I said, you don't have to spend a lot of money to surprise your partner in ways to make them feel special. Doing things that show that you put time and effort out of your day to make your partner feel special will ultimately make them feel that connection. Especially if you have a set routine down and it goes against your routine, this will make them feel a little more special. I hope you take anything I said today about expectancy violation theory and long distance relationships into consideration. Again, I am talking from experience, but I do hope that this does help someone out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next pit stop. Bye!